Welcome back. We're on episode 4 of The Luxury of Discipline. This is a series where we learn that discipline is not punishment, but we see discipline as devotion. Devotion to your future, devotion to your energy, devotion to the life you know you are meant to live. We will learn and we will feel how discipline is the structure that holds together a beautiful life. Now that it's episode 4, we're going to talk about something that's very dear to my heart, and that is why we need to stop intellectualizing life and start experiencing it. So far, episode 1 talked about giving ourselves permission to change. Episode 2 helped us understand why we need to define ourselves as the learner. Episode 3 introduced the concept of running the experiment. And now we are going to talk about experiencing. And this time, I actually have a story to share with you. Back in summer of 2024, I was having a beautiful session with my therapist. And at this point, we had been working together for 2 years, probably. I would have a session once per month, and I enjoyed it because I would talk to her and unravel some of the things that I was experiencing and thinking and going through. And she always had such clarity and understanding for helping me remove my own roadblocks. This particular session, we were talking about intellectualizing life and how I'm such a planner, a thinker, recovering from analysis paralysis. Because she had known me for a while, she understood that I would often describe my desire for success as it related to my desire to have security and safety. However, at this time in my life, I was going through a transition where I didn't feel as connected to this idea that the reason I wanted success was because I wanted stability, structure, and security in my life. And she shared a beautiful story with me as I was ranting on about some struggles I was going through and my confusion of what path to choose in life and what's the best route, the most effective that's going to help me succeed. Trying to figure it out all in my head, strategize. She looked at me with a sweet smile and she offered a story. She said, "Natalie, I understand you because at your age, I was very similar. I'm now in my mid-40s. I have 2 young children between the ages of 4 and 7. And I look back on my 20s and a part of me wishes that I wasn't so fixated on stability, structure, and safety." Now that she was sharing this story being in her mid-40s and the way she was looking at me, something struck a deep chord, because what I felt from her story was she had done it all right by the book. She had sought out security and structure and safety and stability, and she achieved just that. She obviously went to school and got her doctorate and is now a licensed professional and living a very successful life. She has a happy marriage, 2 young children. And as she shared this story with me, a part of her almost called out to me in my young age to live life, to set myself free, to experience life. And she then told me about a book called Siddhartha. Siddhartha is a book very much structured around Eastern philosophy, written by the German author Hermann Hesse. Forgive me if I butchered his name. And the name Siddhartha means achieving meaning, which is a beautiful foreshadow for what the book is about, because it covers the story of a man named Siddhartha. And he goes through 5 different phases in his life. Number 1 is he is born and is the son of a priest, a very well-respected priest. And Siddhartha is set out for a very successful life as a priest himself. However, he reaches a point in his young adolescence, young 20s perhaps, where he has this deep calling to search for meaning and realizes that the life he's living is not that. So he decides to leave his home as a young man, leave his father, and go live with these monks that are similar to hermit people in the vein that they deny themselves even the most basic necessities, food, shelter, etc., and are in fact beggars because they believe that through suffering, through denying themselves food, water, shelter, living in nature, in the forest, that they will achieve meaning. Siddhartha lives with them for a good amount of time and decides that it's time for him to move on because that's not the concluding story of his search for meaning. He still hasn't found it yet. He then goes with his best friend, the third phase of his life, and goes to a nearby town where the Buddha is teaching his philosophies and his practices. And it is evident to Siddhartha that this man, this Buddha, is enlightened, has found his search for meaning and has found his purpose and meaning in life. And although Siddhartha is very appreciative to meet the Buddha and experience some of his teachings, he realizes that they are just that. Unfortunately for him, simply being told and taught these wise lessons isn't enough, because Siddhartha feels deeply that he needs to experience these things for himself in order to fully understand and feel these wise words that the Buddha is teaching. So the fourth phase of his life, he leaves and he goes to the nearby town where he meets a prostitute. And he thinks to himself, this is my time to experience love. But the prostitute, her name is Kamala. Kamala says, oh no, Siddhartha, that's not how it works. You must pay. So Siddhartha decides to start learning the game of business and how to make money. And he eventually becomes very successful. And in this game of business and money, he dabbles his toes in gambling and drinking and fully immersing himself in the pleasures of life, and eventually has a child with this woman, Kamala, and in that way gets to experience part of the hedonism that is being human. And he reaches a point that is enough, and he feels out of touch with his spirituality. So the fifth and last stage of his life, he ends up coming across and crossing paths with this man who lives by a river. And this man is a very wise old ferryman, they call him, who helps transport people across the river. And in meeting this man and living the life with him by the river, Siddhartha has the most wonderful conversations, because this man is one of the best listeners that he's ever come across and just absorbs and soaks up what you're pouring into him like a sponge. In this experience, in this last phase of Siddhartha's life, he realizes through being by the river that is just ever flowing and ever connected, that everything in the world is at the same time black and white, hot and cold, good and bad. He realizes that life is everything all at the same time, and he creates this word called Om, which is all connectedness, the circular nature of life, and that through experiencing both the bad and the good in life, that is truly how we find meaning. But it is through experiencing that you will fully understand and gain that perspective, gain that bird's eye view that he did at this final stage of his life. And my therapist shared this book with me in alignment with her message of subtly hinting that she would do anything to go back and live life more on the edge and make more bad choices and perhaps be more free flowing and less strict, rigid, and structured. She would. And so in that beautiful hour I had with her, I realized that the message I needed to hear is to experience life, to stop intellectualizing life, to start putting into practice all the wonderful things I had learned through books and podcasts and self-exploration and my thirst and hunger for knowledge, and start practicing it in the real world, experiencing what do I like, what do I not like, what types of people do I like to be around, do I not like to be around, and treating myself to the joys that is living life, to go out and explore and take myself on adventures. In fact, that very weekend after speaking with her, I decided to take myself to the beach, and I walked on the beach and I put my toes in the sand and got my trousers wet from the sea water. I then took myself out to sushi and enjoyed a beautiful dinner alone and fully immersed in the experience that was that moment. And I thought to myself, one day I won't have the luxury of solo dates, because one day I will have a family and I will have more responsibilities than I do at this current stage in my life. It's almost a sin to waste this precious time and to wish for something something to be different when the stage that I'm in is beautiful in and of itself. And so this is my message to you, to do something spontaneous, to take action, to experience life. Maybe it's simply going on a weekend trip away. Maybe it's meeting a new friend for coffee. Maybe it's taking the dance class that you've wanted to take. Maybe it's finally writing in your journal in the middle of a park and feeling the cool breeze brush through your hair as you sit there and just take in the moment. Maybe it's taking yourself on a solo date. Maybe it's actually going with friends and saying yes to that friend that always asks you to meet up. Whatever it is, step outside of your door, walk around, move, experience life, dip yourself in, let go of the plan, the structure, the fixation that you need to choose the right path, and just start experiencing. Take a step forward in any direction, because you will learn something about yourself, about the world, about what you want, what you don't want, and you will learn much faster by experiencing rather than intellectualizing. So that's my story for this episode. Do come back, because we have much more to cover in episode 5. But until then, happy experiencing.